بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى صحبه وآله أجمعين. Last time we talked about the Crusades, but we have not finished it. And this time, inshallah, we will carry on and probably will not finish the story of the Crusades as well, or the events. But before I carry on with where we left last time, let me, in about 10 minutes time, summarize what happened in the first campaign of the Crusades. There were quite a few campaigns, about 5 campaigns of the Crusades. The first one was the most important and the most ferocious one. They were all bad and the most successful, actually, of the 5 campaigns. So I'm gonna go to PowerPoint, and from there probably I'll use it all day today. I've prepared a lot of notes on it. So let's share the screen and then I'll go through what I have prepared for you today, inshallah. Right. First thing, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we said about the Crusades last time, that we explained briefly the status of the Muslim world at that time and the status of the Europe as well. The time of the Crusades was from the beginning of the 20th or the 10th, the end of the 10th century for 200 years after that. We said that the Muslim world, if we see the map here, that was during the Umayyad time, because the Muslim expanded only during three periods in their history. The period of the Khalifa al-Rashidin, the Umayyads, Khalifa al-Rashidin from the year 11 Hijri till the year 41, then the Umayyad from the year 41 till 132, then the Abbasid ruled for 400, 500 years. There was no expansion there. And then for the next 300 years, no expansion till the Ottoman, the Turks came, and again, they expanded more into towards Europe. At the end of the 11th century, as it shows in the map, that the Muslim world was unfortunately ruled by, directly or indirectly, by a very extreme Shia group called the Fatimids. The Fatimids, for the first 500 years of Shi'ism, was the main group in the world of Shi'ism. After 200 years of founding the Shi'ism, a man called Nobakhti, a Shia scholar, he wrote a book in about the year 300, 350, something like this Hijri, about the groups of the Shia, and he counted 70 groups of Shia. But the first few hundred years, I said the Fatimids, or the Ismailis, quickly go back here. The Ismailis, remember, they are from the son of Ja'far as-Sadiq. He had Ismail. He appointed him as his successor as an imam, but he died in his lifetime. Then they passed it on to Abdullah. Abdullah died. They passed it on to Musa al-Qasim. But some Shia said, no, he has not died. He could not have died because he was appointed by Allah. How could he die? He hasn't become imam. So the Shia split into that man into at least 3 groups. Some said, no, he became a god. Others say, no, not God, but divine. Others say he was Al-Mahdi. All those who followed him, one way or another, although he wasn't aware of anybody following him, all those who believe that they are Ismailis, they are called Ismailis. And today they are called Aga Khanis, as well as Bohra. Anyway, they kept splitting non-stop. The ones who were controlling the Muslim world at that time, 3 different groups of Ismailis, because other Shias referred themselves to other imams, but those who referred themselves to Ismail, they were in North Africa called the Fatimites. They call themselves the children of Fatima. They have nothing to do with Fatima. The reason I'm repeating all this, I really like you to be very familiar with the story of the Crusades, so you can reproduce it again. I know you enjoyed it last time, but it's good now to cement your information. So there were 3 groups of Ismailis. One that controlled North Africa for about 200 years, but not in one place. They were moving from one place to another. The most they ruled is Egypt for about 250 years. And then there was the Kurmuts, the ones who were specialized in destroying Kaaba and attacking and killing Hajjis for about 60, 70 years. They're the ones who stole the black stone. And then the Khalifa in Baghdad had to pay a lot of money to buy it off from them. And then the third group was the Buwayhiyin. Buwayhiyin never really ruled directly, indirectly. They were in control of the Khalifa in Baghdad. Now let's talk about a new concept, probably, which is a bit confusing for many people, and that is the term Khalifa and Sultan and Malik, king. The three terms were used at the same time in the Muslim, and with no confusion to the people then. Everybody thinks that they mean the same, but for different areas. No. The Khalifa was the Khalifa of Rasulullah. So he was in charge. He was the overall leader of the Muslim world. So after the Prophet ﷺ, the Khalifa became Abu Bakr, then Umar, then Uthman, then Ali, then Muawiyah, and then carry on, the Khulafa al-Umayyun, then al-Abbasiyun. But al-Abbasiyun who ruled Baghdad and the rest of the Muslim world, the Khalifas depended on a lot of strangers and foreigners because of internal trouble. So the Shia has somehow, a group of Shia, again, Ismailis, called Buwayhiyin, managed to control him. So he was like a toy in their hands, and they were controlling the whole state. So they called their main man there Sultan. Sultan means king, really. But they call him Sultan. So in the mosques where the Shia controlled, they used to make a dua for the Sultan and for the Khalifa. This is lasted for about 200 years till the a new Sunni strong man called Tughrul Beg. That's not our Tughrul, that's 200 years before that. Tughrul Beg was a Sunni Turkish who managed to control Iran, Afghanistan, and the Turkish states. The Khalifa called Al-Muntasir Billah sought his help, secretly invited him. He came to Baghdad and got rid of the Shia altogether. He became the Sultan. So he was the effective ruler, but he was Sunni and not Shia, and he had no problem with the Sultan. And the Sultan had no problem with him, right? So this Tughrul Beg, right, died a few years after. That was in the year 455 Hijri. And the Shia has been in control of Baghdad for 100 years before that, right? When he died, his nephew Alp Arsalan, he became the leader of that state, of that, what you call the Seljuk state. Seljuk is the name of some tribes from the Turkish tribes, right? Because the Turkish were many tribes, and they spread from east of Iran till China, all that area called. Till now, there are Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, etc. About 5 of them. Right? We'll have a look at the map there. So this Arsalan, Alp Arsalan was a great fighter, very able leader. What he did, he expanded the state to look how big it was. Almost probably half of the Muslim world. They took all over the Turkish states up to Turkey as well, right? But Turkey wasn't in their control. Turkey was part of the Eastern Roman Empire. It used to be called Asia Minor. Alp Arsalan decided to invade the Romans in their own land. By that time, the Roman emperor at that time, he realized the plans of this Alp Arsalan. So him and the Armenians who live around this here, they gathered an army of 200,000 men and attacked Alp Arsalan. They attacked him. He wasn't quite prepared. He only had 20,000 men, but in a battle which is called Malath Kurd, Alp Arsalan managed to beat them badly and captured the the Roman emperor and release him for £1 million of that currency at the time, and released thousands of Muslim prisoners. So by then Alp Arslan took the state from China up to Istanbul, right? That's Alp Arslan. Alp Arslan had or his father before me, Alp Arslan has a minister called Nizamul Mulk. Sorry? Alp Arslan had a minister called Nizamul Mulk. Nizamul Mulk is very famous in Muslim history. He realized that the Muslims have been under the influence of Shia for a very long time. As I said, some areas 100 years, some areas 200 years, even Jerusalem, Damascus, North Africa. So he established regular schools. The first man to establish full-time schools throughout the area that they controlled. And he was not sectarian. He established different schools, Hanafi, Shafi'i, but all Sunnis, to re-educate the Muslims who have been under the influence of the Shia. And believe me, when the Shia hits a place, straight away they spread their religion. In Syria now, and Iraq, they're establishing Shia schools, Shia universities, and even they're giving children $500,000 lira, Syrian lira, which means about £500 for whoever masters the Persian language. So anyway, Nizam al-Mulk started schools. Not only started schools, the Turk leaders who came after him, 3 or 4 of them, they did the same. Even Salahuddin, when he took over Egypt from the Shia, the first thing he did was establishing Sunni schools to re-educate the people, right? So he has done a big favor to the Muslims, right? Alp Arslan died. He was killed in a battle, and his son took over, called Malik Shah. Malik Shah, he was a good leader as well, not exceptional, but he was a good leader. He kept the area that his father and his grandfather have managed to rule. And one of his good deeds that he noticed a very able army officer called Ag Sungur. He appointed him a general, a leader of the army, and then as a governor of Aleppo. Ag Sungur one day visited Damascus, and when he was in Damascus, at that time, a group of Shias, Ismailis, formed a mafia group called the Assassins, in English, Assassins. Mm-hmm. This is in Arabic, Hashashin. That's what assassin, Hashashin. Hashashin means drug takers, drug users. Those Shias, they used to take drugs and then they will sacrifice their life and go and assassinate. So it was assassination groups, really. And they assassinated quite many Muslim leaders at that time. So they killed that when he was in Damascus. Actually, he was in the mosque. Somebody approached him and stabbed him and killed him. He left his son Imaduddin, which we spent last week talking about Imaduddin Zinc, right? The conqueror of Al-Raha. Imaduddin was 10 years old. But then this Nizam al-Mulk was still alive. And some other army officers took care of him, and they brought him up to be a leader, a fighter, etc. Then he became the governor of Aleppo in his father's place. And then he took over the whole Seljuk empire and started again spreading knowledge, as well as he realized by that time the Crusades have already landed in the Muslim land, and to fight them, he realized he couldn't do it because the Muslim land was divided. Almost every town, every city was independent for the next one. And when the people asked them to unite, they rather get the help of the Crusades rather than unite or give up their little domains, right? But still, by force, Imaduddin managed to unite most of Western Iraq, most of the Asia Minor, and north of Syria. He tried to At Damascus, he couldn't. His last great deed was the conquest of Al-Raha. Al-Raha is one of the 4 counties that the Christians established. Right? Okay, so we'll come back to Al-Raha later on. So few days or as soon as he finished with Al-Raha, he said it was a quarter of the Crusades gains in the Middle East. And when he took Al-Raha, it wasn't a one council, one off. The whole area, those Crusades didn't have only one city to defend. Wherever they went, they built hundreds altogether, not everyone, built hundreds of small fortifications and small castles to protect their main capitals. So this Imad al-Din cleared all the area before attacking them, and we know how he tricked them, pretended he was attacking somewhere else. He made Justin was the leader of Al-Raha, leave it, and then he took over Al-Raha, which was a very big castle, and that was a big nightmare for the Christians. They never expected that. There's a story, interesting story, that Sicily was ruled by the Muslims. Do you remember during Muawiyah time when the king Constantine II ran away there and they killed him there? The Muslim came and ruled it, but then the Christian took it after 200-300 years after. But there were still some Muslims there. One Muslim scholar was respected by the Christian leader of Sicily, and he used to invite him to his court. So I can't remember the name of that scholar, but anyway, one day while he was in the company of the king, he fell asleep. He was an old man. During that time, some man came and whispered something in the ear of the king of the Sicily. The king woke up the Muslim leader, sheikh, scholar, and he said to him, "We have good news for us and bad news for you." He said, "What is it?" He said, "Our forces attacked some North African city and killed many Muslims and brought back with us as slaves children and women. Where was your Muhammad to protect them?" This sheikh, he said to him, "He was at Al-Raha and he just liberated it." Everybody laughed off. They knew how powerful Raha is. But that king said, if the sheikh said it, it must be true. And it was true. SubhanAllah, probably he saw a dream or he saw the prophet in his dream. Because Al-Raha fell to the Muslims, the Europeans felt the danger in Palestine as well as in Europe. So they prepared a second campaign. They prepared a second campaign now to reinforce their people there. They realized if the Muslim took Al-Raha, they could take Antioch, etc. So, okay, let's go quickly. This is the roots of the First Crusade. We said most of the First Crusades were what? French, some German, and very powerful army from the Italians. They came across Asia Minor, here Turkey, and down there, and they took over Al-Raha. This is Al-Raha here, and all the Syrian, Palestinian, and Lebanese coastline. They did not go too deep inside. They were always European somehow, were afraid of entering the Arabian desert. Right, and we said the First Crusade campaign quickly, there were a lot of mobs first, that they were killed by a man called Kulj Arsalan. He was the leader of the Turks in that area. But then when they sent their armies, although they lost many men, but they managed to besiege Antioch, which is Antakya, was very powerful. But after they sieged for 7 months, actually. And they lost many men while they're there. But still, after 7 months, 8 months, the supplies ran out. Then, and then the Fatimites who were watching from Egypt, and they were controlling at that time Damascus and Jerusalem. They've sent a message to the Crusaders that we will help you and will not fight you as long as you give us Jerusalem and you can take whatever you can put your hand on. So there was an agreement now, first agreement between the Crusades and the Ismailis. Because of this reason, other Muslims could not send the help to them. So they took the whole thing, and they even took Jerusalem, the Crusades. When they took Jerusalem, there were 1,400 Fatimite soldiers. They were transported safely back to Egypt or to the coast, to Ascalon. Ascalon was a city north of Gaza now, where it was controlled by the Fatimites. The Fatimites were angry because they felt they were betrayed by the Crusades. They've sent two big armies, that they were defeated badly by the Crusades. But then they tried, the Crusades, to take Damascus. They couldn't, really. They've tried, they couldn't. So one day they gathered all their forces, and they knew that if we don't take Damascus, we are not safe in Jerusalem. It took the second campaign of the Crusades to do that. We'll come back to this later on, inshallah. This is when the Seljuks ambushed the first Crusade campaign, and they killed tens of thousands of them. But this is when they entered Antioch, the Christians, and they were just slaughtering Muslims and throwing them over the walls. Right. When the Christian entered Jerusalem after 40 days of siege, Godfrey from France, he became the king there, and they killed all of, they promised the Muslims that they will not touch them, etc. They killed every single person there, man, woman, and child. There were 70,000 Muslims killed. There are quite a few letters that they sent to their families. Somebody managed to get hold of these letters and keep it. When they say, we were going in Jerusalem with the blood up to the knees of our horses. 90 years after, when Salah ad-Din liberated, he didn't kill a single Christian. There's two hadiths here, which I'd like to read for you. One from Ali, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, and one from Abu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Umar radiallahu anh said, you do not win wars or defeat your enemies with men and equipment, with number and equipment, but you win with your obedience to Allah, and because of their disobedience to Allah. So if you are equal in disobedience, they will beat you because they have more men and more equipment. Understand? So when we lose wars, always because of our disobedience. When we disobey Allah, we are just as bad as they are, but they are better than us in equipment and power. There's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ says that the nations are about to descend on you like people gather for a tray of food. Why is it tray of food? Because when you go to eat, fighting is not in your mind. You're just going to eat. It's easy access. So nations, that means, will find it easy to conquer you. Nations are about to conquer you. Nations are about to conquer you or to descend on you as people come to their tray food. One Sahabi said, Messenger of Allah, will we be then small in numbers? The Prophet said, no, there's plenty of you then, but you will be like the scum of the sea or the river. You know what floats in the river? Plenty of it, but has no weight and no value. And Allah will take the fear, your fear in the heart of the kafirs, and will fill your hearts with wahan. Wahan means weakness. Still the Sahabi asked, what do you mean by wahan, Messenger of Allah? He said, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ, that you love life and you hate death. This is the Godfrey's entered Jerusalem. Okay, next one is, yes, the Christians, after they took Jerusalem, they sent few more campaigns, few more men, many of them really. And the Turkish took care of most of them really. The Skalj Arsalan killed most of them. So then the Crusades learned now that route is not safe for them. They took different route. We'll come back to this after, inshallah. Now, this is the domains that the Christians, or the kingdom that the Christians established. One of them is the kingdom of Jerusalem. Kingdom of Jerusalem means most of Palestine, all of Palestine almost, plus most of Jordan. Right? This is Ascalon, which is that is just near to Gaza. Then there was the county of Tripoli, and then again, that's most of the Syrian coastline. And then the Antioch, the third one, which is Antakya today. And the fourth one was Edessa. And this is Aleppo. And this is where what's his name, Alp Arsalan, he had to clear all this area before taking over Edessa. Right? Let's quick look at some sceneries from this. Was probably some artist impression of the city of Aleppo at that time. This is one of this is called Krak. It is a castle in Tripoli. And just to have an idea what the Crusades castle looked like, I mean, this first it was on a hill. The second, it was, even if you manage to breach the first wall, you got another walls upon walls inside it, right? This is, you see it? Yeah, okay. Okay, this is again another picture of it, new pictures. This is all inside the castle. So for this Alp Arslan to conquer it, this wasn't to conquer something like this. This is an achievement. This is all inside the castle. This is how big it is, at least 200 meters by 100 meters. This, right? This is what Edessa looked like. That is Al-Raha. In addition, I said there were many fortifications and garrisons for the Crusades, something like these things here. They had many of them, hundreds of them throughout the land there. This is Karak, is in Jordan. Again, this is was Salah ad-Din, is one of the last castles for Salah ad-Din to conquer. They always make them on the top of a hill, and still Muslims managed to conquer them. The second Crusades now, what happened? Because the Al-Raha fell, the Christians fell, you know, that they're losing, that they're going to lose Jerusalem, and they're going to lose a lot. So at that time, the Pope was Pope Ignatius III. He only managed to convince Conrad III of Germany and Louis the ninth. No, that's not the ninth. The seventh. Sorry, that's wrong here. Louis VII of France. Both of them prepared big armies, and they went to the Middle East. They took slightly different route, but still they took a coastal route to arrive to Palestine from Turkey. But the Turkish managed to kill most of Conrad's men, but not the French one. They couldn't, and they managed to. The attack, they managed, some of them really, about some 50,000 or 200,000 managed to reach into Jerusalem.
Uncle, are you still on slide 19? Because it seems to be frozen on slide 19.
Say it again, sorry.
Are you still on slide 19, which shows the picture of the two walls? That's
are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, stop share. Let me see. Share again. No, I'm at this one now.
Okay, now we're on this. Okay.
Yes,
okay. Has it changed now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, this is the second Crusade route. If you look at it, they avoided most of Turkey, and they just went from the coastal area, right? And they arrived at Antioch and Acre, which is Akka, and when they arrived, those people there, straight away, they went for Damascus. At that time, Nuruddin was still alive, and he tried many times to unite with the Damascus people. They wouldn't. Even when he came to attack, to conquer by force, they sought help from the Christians. When they left, the Christians came and besieged them. Then they sought help from Nuruddin. From Imaduddin. Imaduddin came for their help. So they only surrounded Damascus for 5 days. They heard that Imaduddin on his way. So what they did, they fled. And both the French and the German kings, they left within 2 years. They left the whole of Palestine, and they found that it's very costly to be there. Right, now we come to Nuruddin, a new leader. Now, Imaduddin, what happened? Imaduddin, after Al-Raha, few days after Al-Raha, he went to occupy another castle, and while he was there, some of those Shia assassins cut his head off at night, and he died, unfortunately. Then he left his son Imaduddin, Nuruddin. Nuruddin, people call him the sixth Khalifa of Islam, the sixth rightly guided Khalifa, Khulafa al-Rashidin. The four, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. The fifth, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And this is the sixth. I mean, his father was very pious, very good man, etc. But this was even better. Very interesting story about Nuruddin. Nuruddin became a leader what his father left, and he knew that his first priority before fighting like his father spent 18 years before attacking Raha. Do you remember? 18 years just to unite Muslim areas, and he has united a lot except Damascus. Most of Syria and most of Iraq, west of Iraq, most of Turkey, but couldn't do Damascus because it was too close to the Crusaders, and the Crusaders, the people of Damascus would not agree. They even were seeking help from the Christians. Nuruddin had now two aims. He said, I must get Damascus, and not only Damascus, Egypt as well, because Egypt was the southern front for Syria. The Christians could attack you from Egypt easily, especially it's very near by sea from Egypt to Palestine. Or there is a desert in the south from Gaza and Sinai, but by sea is very near. So he had plans. By hook or crook, he has got to take over all of Syria, this Nuruddin, as well as Egypt. Egypt was still ruled by the Fatimids or the Ismailis. This righteous man, one day, I don't know whether you know the story, but I'll still say it. One day he saw the Prophet ﷺ in his dream, saying him, Nuruddin, Nuruddin, anqidhni, not help, rescue me. So he woke up disturbed. How the Prophet is in distress, ﷺ. And how can you help someone who died 500 years before? So he made wudu, prayed 2 rak'ah, and went to sleep. Again, the Prophet ﷺ came to him and said, Nuruddin, anqidhni, rescue me. He woke up again, disturbed, what to do? He didn't know what to do. Prayed and slept. The third time, he said, save me from those two men. And he saw the pictures or the images of 2 European men. He had a very righteous, wise minister. He sent for him in the middle of the night. He told him about the dream. That man said, if the Prophet wanted help, we have to help him straight away. Both men didn't go back to sleep. They gathered 20 men, 20 horsemen, a lot of cash and some provisions, went straight to Medina. A few days after, they were all fighters and they were all horsemen. Some few days after, probably 7 to 10 days, they arrived in Medina. The Imam of Medina and the Amir of Medina welcomed them, then somehow introduced themselves, and they didn't tell the people about the dream. They just asked the Imam of the Haram, of the Haram al-Nabawi. He said, anything strange, anything wrong here? He said, no, everything is normal. Then that wazir, that minister, he said to the Imam, the king has brought with him cash, and he wants to reward every resident of Medina with cash, but he wanted to give it to them by hand. So invite everybody to the mosque. So everybody came to the mosque and they were issuing the money, giving the money, and the king was watching. Then everybody took his money and went. Then they asked the people there, is this all the men you have in Medina? They said, yes. He said, no, there must be a few others. They said, no, except 2 Europeans, but they keep to themselves and they don't harm anybody, very religious. They pray in the mosque all the time. And they give a lot of charity. He says, call them. They called them and they were exactly as he saw in his dream. He said, what are you doing here? He said, we are new Muslims and we like to be close to the Prophet's grave. He said, take me to your house. They took them to his house. He entered there. He couldn't see anything strange. Suddenly, Allah inspired him to pull a carpet off from the floor. He pulled it. He found there is a hole. Under the hole, there was a tunnel towards the Prophet's grave. After some good treatment, they admitted they were sent by some Christians in Europe to steal the Prophet's body. But subhanAllah, they didn't reach there. They were killed on the spot. And Nuruddin, before he left Medina, he dug a very wide and big and deep trench around the Prophet's grave and filled it with molten lead. And he left. Then the Prophet asked somebody to help. That man must be very righteous. So when people call him the 5th Khalifa or the 6th Khalifa, probably he was one. Al-Khalifa al-Rashid al-Sadis. As we told you, this Mahdi, the Mahdi, we got many Mahdis in Islam, in Sunni Islam, but other people don't have Mahdi. They never have it. Anyway, this Nuruddin, some of his characters, he never used foul language. This Arra that his father liberated, his father was very kind to the Christian, the indigenous population of Arraha. He kept them there. Twice they betrayed him and they tried to give the city back to the Romans. So he cleared from all the Christians. You can't trust those, especially the Armenians there. Right? He was awesome. People used to fear him, but at the same time, he was kind, fair, especially to the weak. He never used public money, only enough to live on, just like Abu Bakr and Umar. Because those people felt that the public money belonged to all the public. If you take the money more than what you need, then you are challenging millions of Muslims, right? That's why, you see, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, when before he was a Khalifa, he was with the Khalifa before him, Sulaiman, in Hajj. And at that time, that year, there were many people in Hajj. I don't know how many, there's no figures, but the Hajj, there's always many people. And Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said to the Khalifa, you see all those people there? He said, yes. He said, those are your subjects in this life, but they are your plaintiffs in the day of judgment. They will be charging you, all of them, for all the injustice if you do any. And he cried. So that's why this Khalifa, the true one, they hardly just use enough money just to live on, right? And he was doing Qiyam al-Layl, etc. So anyway, now when he became leader again, he knew the leader, he said, I have to get Damascus. He knew by force he couldn't, because they always seek the help of the Christians. So he became friendly with the leaders there, with the army officers, with the judges, with everybody. Was so friendly that one day they had dispute and they invited him to take over. And alhamdulillah, and he married to the daughter of the king of Damascus. So he came and took over Damascus. And straight away, he changed the azan, because the Shia, whenever when they change, they've got the Shia azan slightly different than the Sunni azan. They don't say Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah. Because they don't say it anyway. They've got their own azan. He changed the azan again, like his father, his grandfather, Nizam al-Mulk, straight away start spreading schools, Muslim schools, educating people. He used to spend a lot of money on the scholars. Just come and spread Sunni Islam back there. Now he established this. And one of his greatest achievements was that he employed Salahuddin. Now, who is Salahuddin? Nuruddin's father, Imaduddin, got involved in the dispute between the Khalifa and the Sultan. The Khalifa, the difference between Khalifa and Sultan, right? The Sultan was the real ruler, the Khalifa was a figurehead, and they used to disagree between them. So when the Khalifa had a problem with the Shia, this Nuruddin stood by him. When the Khalifa had a problem with the Sunni Turk, Nuruddin stood by the Sunni one, because the Khalifa was useless anyway. So he went to help him one day, not Nuruddin, Imaduddin, the father of Nuruddin. When he went to help him one day, he lost the war against the Khalifa's men. He fled to a town called Tikrit in North Iraq. That's where Saddam Hussein was born and come from. Tikrit in North Iraq. In Tikrit, that Tikrit is very near to Kurdistan now, inhabited by many Kurdish. There was a man, Kurdish man there, he was in charge of the town, called Najmuddin Ayyub. Najmuddin Ayyub was in charge, religious man, righteous man, powerful man, but for a small town leader. So he accommodated Imaduddin and gave him safe passage to Syria, to Aleppo, where that's his domain there, was where his forces were there. Few years after, the Khalifa, when he heard about what this Najmuddin did, he sacked him. Najmuddin had to run for his life. He went to Imaduddin. Imaduddin remembered the favor he did for him. He welcomed him, and actually the day he was sacked, this Najmuddin Ayyub, a son of his was born. They called him Salahuddin. They took the baby, which was just 1 day old, and they ran away to Aleppo. In Aleppo, Imaduddin welcomed them, and he made Najmuddin the governor of Baalbek, a city in Syria or Lebanon now. Salahuddin and his father and his uncle grew up to become great warriors. Nuruddin noticed that, so he kept Salahuddin and his father close to him. Right? So whenever he went to war, Salahuddin, not his father a bit old, but his uncle called Asaduddin Sherku. There were two. Salahuddin was about 20 years old at the time. He kept, so he kept him by him. So he learned a lot from Nuruddin, the Salahuddin, leadership, Islamic knowledge, piety, a lot from Nuruddin. And then the Fatimites in Egypt, they sought help from Nuruddin. They were fighting each other. The Khalifa there, I don't know what's his name, the last Khalifa was a useless man. He wasn't in charge at all. Who was in charge there? His minister. His minister had problem with another minister. There were two ministers, one called Dargham and one called Shawar. They were fighting among themselves who to be the real leader of the whole of Egypt and North Africa. Well, up to Libya at the time, because they lost the rest for the Muwahhidin and Murabitin. We went through this last time. But they were in charge of many cities in Syria, even in Yemen, even in Mecca and Medina. So those two ministers, Shawar and Dargham, they were having real wars. One of them, Dargham, sought help from the Crusades to help him to rule Egypt. The Crusades sent an army to Egypt, a city called Dimyat, not far away from Alexandria today, to help Dargham. Shawar, not Shawar, the Khalifa, or the Shawar and the Khalifa were at the same side. They sent for Nuruddin to help them. He sent them Asaduddin and Salahuddin to help them against the Crusades. On their way with the big force there, they went to Alexandria and smashed the Crusades before arriving in Cairo. They really beat the Crusades badly. And they went there. Now, when they went there, there were Sunnis and the others, all the Shia, anti-Muslims, they swear at the Prophet, not at the Sahaba and the mosque. It's horrible to help such people as well. But Nuruddin did not want Egypt to fall to the Crusades. If it fell to the Crusades, that means he would be fighting two fronts at the same time. The Western front, that means the Syrian coast, all of it, some 200 miles of Crusades, and they're getting supplies non-stop from the sea, from the Europeans, as well as the Crusades from Egypt, from the south. So Nuruddin had vision. He was clear about his objectives. By hook or crook, even helping the Fatimites, he did not want Egypt to fall to the Christians. So he sent his two best men with a large army, it wasn't a small army, to help them. Once they helped them, they were there. The Khalifa was so impressed, he appointed Asaduddin Sherku, the uncle of Salahuddin, he appointed him as his minister. Now this Shawar became so jealous, he lost his job. He sent a message to the Christians, come and help me now against Salahuddin. And not Salahuddin, Asaduddin. Salahuddin wasn't the main man there yet, till his uncle died a few weeks or few months after. Then he became the minister there. Come and help me. the Christians sent a force, another force, to fight Asad al-Din Shirkuh in Egypt. Nur al-Din got the news. So what he did, he went and attacked the Christians in Palestine. With big force as well. See, now he controlled very big area, this Nur al-Din. He went with big force, attacked the Christians. Because of his attack, the Christians in Palestine and Syria could not help the Christians in Egypt, the campaign. So they had to withdraw. So it worked well with them, right? Soon after that, Asad al-Din Shirkuh died, and the Khalifa appointed Salah ad-Din as his minister. Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, that's next week. We'll talk about Salah ad-Din, how he converted Egypt, North Africa, and liberated Jerusalem. That's for next week. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.